It seems like Fox Business. Yeah. It seems like Democrats want businesses to be taxed more, pay their workers.
Really? Is that what you think?
pay their workers.
Excuse me.
I didn't get to ask a question.
Okay, thank you.
Senator,
you want to hold it? Okay. We held a hearing on a 32-hour work week because what we have seen is that over the last 50 years, despite a huge increase in worker productivity, almost all of the new wealth has gone to the top 1%, while 60% of the people are living paycheck to paycheck. Many of our people are exhausted. We work the longest hours of any people in the industrialized world. I think it's time for a shortened work week.
Could I ask you a question about that? It seems like Democrats want businesses to be taxed more,
that's not my assumption.
Pay their workers more, lower prices, and now pay people not to work.
You know what I would like to see?
How are businesses going to survive that? That's the question. How can businesses survive all of those proposals?
When Mr. Bezos pays an effective tax rate lower than the average worker, I think we have a real problem in our tax system. I think that billionaires have got to start paying their fair share of taxes. Thank you.
Okay, so I have to say, first off, I miss Bernie Sanders. I know he hasn't gone away, but I miss hearing, people actually willing to criticize those who have the most in society. I mean, you have Fox and Fox Business, which occasionally cosplays as being against the elites or something, but you can see they're incredibly defensive towards corporations that have received massive benefits, since the founding of America. Before we continue with the story, we depend on members to keep on going. Don't wait, click join now on YouTube. And so that is Bernie Sanders and Fox Business Network's Hillary Vaughn, who wanted to ask a question. That's all. She wasn't trying to make a point. She just wanted information from him. So I understand Bernie Sanders' frustration because she's just doing propaganda and then kind of asking a question at the end. So Bernie Sanders is proposing a shorter work week. We have a 40-hour work week, which we've had for decades and decades and decades and decades, okay? Ever since the last truly successful labor movement got us the weekend and got us the protections that we have. So he has the crazy radical idea that after nearly 100 years of productivity gains, maybe someday we could work a little bit less than we do now. And Fox News, the populist movement, the voice of the working person is here to immediately say, how dare you? Never will we toil less. In fact, we'll toil more. How are businesses supposed to serve? I mean, I know they have record profits. I know they're doing amazingly coming out of the pandemic, but you want them to pay people more. You want them to be taxed more. As Bernie Sanders points out, and we'll get to the numbers eventually, many of the most successful corporations in the country pay negative taxes. They receive money from the government rather than paying into it. I think that they'll probably be okay paying 5% or 10% or whatever laughably low tax rate we would be able to get. That's not even what Bernie Sanders is calling for right now. He's just talking about the possibility that we could switch over to a shorter work week, which many experiments and examples from in the United States and around the world have already shown benefits workers, and the corporations tend to maintain those systems after the trial period, implying that it does not devastate the businesses. But Brett, I want your thoughts about that little interaction.
Yeah, the word businesses is used the dumbest way possible in that question. And I think it's used the dumbest way possible generally. Like saying businesses is like saying people. Like we already distinguish in our tax code people who make more and people who make less. When Bernie Sanders is talking businesses, he's talking about major corporations that are benefiting from socialism that benefits the rich. Huge tax cuts, lobbyist leverage that they get to carve out special favors for them. When Fox Business is cosplaying and they talk about how are businesses going to survive, they're advocating on behalf of large businesses and pretending to advocate on behalf of small businesses. But these things with 40-hour work weeks changing, like small businesses, I think a lot of people on the left generally ignore how hard it is to have a small business. And you want to know that people who understand the difference between a large business and a small business, ask a small business owner. They're going to say a lot of stuff very similar to people who are working like in the labor market, right? That's something that I think really is where the conversation just disintegrates. The most inroads I have with conservatives when I talk to them, conservatives that don't work for mega corporations, that run their own small businesses, is exactly this. Is like, yeah, giant corporations, the mega rich, the mega wealthy, have such a leg up on literally everybody else. And we can all work together to make them pay their fair share. Because the people who are mad at Amazon are the workers peeing into bottles. And on the other hand, you have the small mom and pop shops who can't do business because they're getting elbowed out by the same people. Yeah. That's the common ground that the Fox business person isn't going to let Bernie talk and find.
Exactly. Yeah, and look, I'm glad that you made that distinction. Bernie clearly is, I mean, he specifically talks about Jeff Bezos. Like, he is focused on these massive corporations. It just, for me, like, I love that interaction because I think I posted on Threads about this. I talked about it in the pre-port yesterday. There was a extended period of TDR where we were recurringly talking about 4-day work weeks and, like, trying to advocate for those who dare to dream of a future that's 3% better than it is today. And I always say you get nuked from orbit if you bring up the possibility, and not just from Fox Business. Everybody seems to agree that we got a weekend, we got the 8-hour workday, generally, not for everybody, and that's it. It should never be better than that. We will never work less. Like, we're talking about a time, there weren't computers. There weren't phones. There weren't, like, not cell phones anyway. There wasn't any of this. Robots, AI, none of that existed. We develop all of that. You still have to work the exact same number of hours. Why? Why should your kids and your grandkids work the same number of hours? Why should they have to wait as long to retire? And that's why I want to tie it into the stuff that Wright's been talking about. I understand there probably aren't a lot of conservatives that are watching this, but if you are, I know that you think deep down to your bones that these people give a damn about you. But why is it that they only get fired up to stop proposals that would benefit working people in defense, as you saw, of massive corporations there? Why is Ben Shapiro talking about raising the retirement age or advocating for his workers to never retire? Why is Matt Walsh talking about killing Social Security? How are these things that are supposed to benefit you? It certainly seems like they benefit those who already are mega wealthy, who already have so much money that it no longer even reads as a real thing. It's just a fantastical pile of gold coins. And for some reason, they maintain this myth, this fiction that they're populist. I don't get it, Brett. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, when we talk about capitalism and what's wrong with it, when I talk about, I'm not going to put it on anyone else. When I talk about what's wrong with capitalism, I'm talking about like the financialization of industries in the economy. And so a lot of the extra money that we're talking about, where does it go? I'm more productive as a worker and we're creating more money for the company, but they can't pay me more. Where does it go? It goes to these investors, and that part of like the actual capital C capitalism portion of it. And that's very, like, when people say, oh, you got to pay a higher tax rate. My question is, like, what is Jeff Bezos' tax going to go toward? No, that's going to disappear. It's going to go to, the money comes into the government. It's going to go to defense contractors. That's stupid. I think we need to regulate certain financial aspects of industry. And we can vary the same way that we have different tiers in our tax code. Now we can apply different tiers to the limitations on how much profit can go back to shareholders. Because that's where it goes. That's where it gets really, really horrible. And that's the vampire that's just sucking money out of companies.
Okay, I disagree a little bit about some of the stuff about not particularly caring if they paid taxes, because for any individual corporation or person, it might not be that much. But obviously, when all of them are evading it, that's a huge amount of money that theoretically doesn't have to go to defense contractors.
But where does it go? How, like, that? There's never really you can't really earmark that stuff.
No, you're not directly earmarking. Well, hypothetically, in some of the bills they try to, but I'm saying that you have to theoretically. The claims about the rising deficit and the national debt are often used to cut programs. Theoretically, if you're bringing in more money, that would be less of a pressure that could even be used as a smokescreen to advocate for those cuts.
My thing is, no normal person, Rick Strom's definitely not watching the show right now because he just called me. The normal person is like I get it when I'm like, tax that bastard. But that money, then most people, the next step is like, where does it go? How does it benefit me better? It benefits me better in my pocket, not going into the government and coming back never. That's
sure,
I'm talking about how to, messaging wise, connect the dots. That's why I think the better success is going to be in regulation.
I think Sure, I would say that very often in Bernie's speeches, he does connect those dots. He talks about those who are sort of getting away with financial murder and the status quo, and then he talks about all the things that we could do with that money. Obviously, it might be a somewhat abstract or indirect relationship, and not everybody makes those linkages, but I think that Bernie Sanders typically does.
For more political news breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/thedamagereport. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.